So The Rock finally decided to go off and do something a little bit different. Did it pay off? I don't know. Let's talk about it. The Smashing Machine. Kind of sounds like something the Hulk would be in. Anywho, The Smashing Machine stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt. It centers around the true story of Mark Kerr, a UFC fighter way back in the day. The movie follows his life and mostly his career from beginning to end, and his highs and lows, his ups and downs, and everything in between. Now, if you are a fan of UFC in any kind of way, you will actually enjoy this movie. It covers a lot of the in and outs of UFC, a lot of the politics, and how it used to be versus what it is now. Now, I will say this, The Rock, I will give him credit because it looks like he actually tried in this movie. In this movie, he actually wasn't playing himself and was actually playing a real-life person. We've never seen him do anything like that. In fact, we haven't truly seen him do anything dramatic or anything that was considered acting. In most of his movies, we know him as just being The Rock, being Dwayne Johnson. In this movie, he actually got to go out of his element, out of his safety net, if you will, and actually do something completely original for him, at least. Now, that's pretty much where the credit stops for him. Because I will admit, while I do admire him for doing something completely different, it really, for me, it didn't work. And what I mean by that is, it was, I think, the particular character he was portraying. Now, I will admit I am not a UFC fan. I am not really knowledgeable when it comes to the UFC in general. However, I did do some research on the actual character he's playing, the person he is playing. And while the looks are very similar in what they did with him, because The Rock had to actually wear prosthetics to look a little bit more like Mark Kerr, he really didn't capture the essence of what I consider Mark Kerr. There were times as he was acting, and again, you can tell he's actually trying here, so again, hats off, but you did not get the emotion in his eyes. You didn't get the uniqueness of the character of Mark Kerr. All I saw and heard, to be fair, is The Rock. And I believe the prosthetics is what really kind of hurt him, even though that was a way of trying to make him look more accurate to the character he's playing. It really hindered his performance because you didn't really get to see him being that expressive. So there was moments to where he should have been doing this or like this, and you really couldn't see that because of the prosthetics. The prosthetics should have helped him, but it ended up hindering his performance in the entire process. Now, with that said, regardless of prosthetics, regardless of facial expressions, every time I heard him talk, all I heard was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I understand that no matter what, unless you're literally changing your voice from a high or low tone, you are going to hear that actor. I totally get that. However, it did not work for this. And I will mention that The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he's in his mid-50s and he's trying to play a character that is around his early to mid-20s in his career. And I will say that completely threw it off. You look at a picture of Mark Kerr back in the day when The Rock is portraying him, and you look at The Rock and they didn't do any CGI to where they could have gotten, de-aged him a little bit. And I understand some people have problems with that, and I do too, to a degree, but if you can nail it really well, like in past Marvel Disney movies, they have done that really well, especially with Michael Douglas. But it's like they didn't even try. They thought the prosthetics would be good enough, and his physique, which is phenomenal as always, but that wasn't enough, at least for me. Again, I will give him credit for trying something completely different and out of his safety net. However, I do believe he needs to do more of these things to where it can really, really capitalize on what he's trying to do. And again, I am not a UFC fan, so I don't know the popularity of this particular fighter, but to me, he was considerably not as known as others. So to make a movie out of this particular fighter, I don't know if it was the smartest move, but I do feel like this movie was more about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing this particular character versus this movie being about the actual character himself. Emily Blunt was great as always. She's pretty good in everything she does. However, she does do something that, at least for me, was a first. She played a character that made me not even like her. And at least in everything I've seen with her, I've liked her character. So I will say that was good on her part because her acting was superb. Especially the very emotional scenes that you really got to see that pain, that hurt, that emotion build up in her. And especially in one particular scene, it was supposed to be extremely emotional and almost very, very sad. And you really saw her performance, and she really, really, in my opinion, outshined Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I will say with this movie, it kind of, I expected more of an origin story, or I'm sorry, not an origin story, but more of a bio story to where you got to see him from when he was like, I don't know, not necessarily born, but really, really young up until current. And while we do catch up with him in current, you don't really see much. Where the movie starts is basically his first fight. And so therefore it tells you the movie just basically starts from his first fight, ends at his last fight, and then kind of catches up when in his current state. And while that's good, I really would have liked to know more about the actual person, the actual personality of Mark Kerr, and we really didn't get to see that. We literally just started with him fighting and ending with him fighting. So while I understand what they were trying to do, I would have liked to have seen more. And the movie was long enough to where we could have actually seen more of his character, give him more personality, give me more of a reason to like him other than what you're showing. I will say The Rock did actually show him as a very gentle giant, a very personal person, very kind person. Of course, he had his moments like everybody else, but his struggle was mainly about losing a fight. He's never lost a fight, and spoiler alert, he does actually lose a fight, and that really takes a toll on him. I did like that aspect of the movie because you're in a situation that you've never been in. You don't know how to act, and when it actually happens, you just have this range of emotion. You don't know how to control it. He doesn't necessarily Hulk out. I was actually kind of waiting for that, but he does have his moments of, let's just say, anger. I see what they were trying to go for in this movie, and while I will say that the movie itself as a whole was okay, I feel like they didn't really capture what they were really trying to. While it did have my interest in some points, I struggled to actually stay focused in this movie and actually stayed interested. And it's not really even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's fault. It's just the movie itself seemed to try to tell more of a story out of something that was just kind of a lesser story. To me, this movie could have easily been a direct-to-DVD or direct-to-streaming or even premiere on TV itself. Not really a theatrical movie. I appreciate the work they put into it. I appreciate the talent that came about it, but at the same time, it just didn't feel like one of these blockbuster movies that capture the essence of a true story. I think casting Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr was a huge mistake, not just because of the acting. He had the physique, and that was great. In fact, he was a little bit bigger than Mark Kerr was back in the day. But I do believe that this was actually more of a negative towards the movie. I personally would have casted Brandon Mullally, I think his name is. Now, even though he is practically the same age as The Rock, I still think he actually has more of a look of Mark Kerr. And even if you would have made it a few years ago, it would have been absolutely perfect. One can argue that casting an unknown would have actually hurt the film, but they were relying on the star power of The Rock, so therefore the movie became more about him than the actual character or than the movie itself. All in all, I thought this movie was okay at best. I would definitely rate it as just wait for streaming. I wouldn't waste my time going to the theater. It would have definitely been better of a movie if it was shorter, at least a half an hour. The Rock was okay. Again, there were moments where he actually shined, and I was like, wow, he did pretty well for, being a dramatic performance. But ultimately, I think it was miscast, and again, it was more just about him in general. The story as a whole was okay. It didn't really have anything that stood out. In fact, I would have rather this movie be more about his partner. I can't remember his name, but I would have rather it be more about him than Mark Kerr. No offense to the real Mark Kerr. So that would basically be my rating, but what did you think about this movie? Did you like it? And let me know in the comments below what you liked about this movie and what you thought of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's brand new performance. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.